Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing right now.
Thanks. I can't believe I got to follow the NASA guy. I was telling Chris was like, so, what's your presentation going to be about here? As you'll see, the crowd pays a lot of attention. So I actually made this entire slideshow during the conference specifically for you. This is never rehashed. This is my first time through it. So if there's a few hiccups on the way, give me a little pauser, and then we'll launch something into space just for the fun of it. So I do use pictures of my kid. I think he's cute, and he might be here in a little while to watch. He's never seen what I do for a living. So I'm going to talk today about open source hardware and openness in general. I think there's a lot going on right now in the open world. And so basically, my remote isn't going to work. All right, I'll keep doing this. No, it's OK. So the way I look at things is pretty much if you're not this guy, you probably subscribe at some level to the philosophy that open beats closed. Whatever systems you're talking about, software, content, media, platforms, openness is tending to do better than closed. And we're seeing more and more examples across more and more industries over time. So for example, when a platform allows us to go do stuff and, for example, make a video of us dancing, we can get 100 million people around the world to watch that video. And that's kind of an interesting stat if you think about it. If you've never seen the evolution of dance, I recommend it. I picked a few other funnies that hopefully you'll all know. The Barack roll, the newest one of the entrants, but already 2 million people have seen it. Basically, I say that technology in some fashion is breaking down barriers that have been erected, whether artificially or by companies, by corporations, by governments, by organizations. And as technology lets us take those barriers down, we get to do lots of cool things with them. So when we open a door to something, and I warned him he'd be in here somewhere. Well, he's got Twitters to write. When we open a door, we enable individuals to do many, many different things. And in some cases, we may love that. In other cases, we may not. And those enablers aren't necessarily, as I said before, governments. They could be really, really small projects done by very, very few people. Or they can actually be fairly large companies that go out there and provide things like APIs and RSS streams and let us go do things with them. But what's really cool is when we can then take all those byproducts and make more powerful things from them. If you don't know what you're looking at here, this is something called housing maps. This is one guy took Craigslist apartment ads, Google Maps, put them together, and I think it started in San Francisco, I'm not sure, but basically lets you find apartments in a visual sense rather than reading through Craigslist ads. All written by one guy who then got hired by Google. So nice payoff for his little efforts. We see that technology, in my opinion, is really forcing society's evolution today. I think, I still have an appendix and all sorts of vestigial things, so we're all probably going to be somewhat like this for the next little while. So the evolution we see happening is through technology. Right? How many people here today text message somebody in their lives on a regular basis? Right? How many of you did so 10 years ago? Right? And how many of you 10 years ago had a phone, cell phone? Right? So the technology came, society changed with it, and now we've had a little bit of an evolution there. And we're going to see how that applies to all sorts of different places. Timing is, of course, really, really important. Just because you built the world's first laptop doesn't necessarily mean you did well with it. How many people here have a laptop? Rhetorical, you can keep the hands down, it's late. Some industries don't do well as their worlds open and change. Some industries do very poorly as their worlds open and change, and they're not necessarily sure how to deal with it. And the worst of all are the ones who really don't move fast enough to pay attention. So for those of you who are twittering while the other people laugh, this is what they saw. So switching tacks for a second, baby's back up. This is Sam, by the way. We're seeing a time where the consumer is becoming the producer. So as you're all twittering, writing blogs, taking pictures, flickering, YouTubing, whatever it is you're doing, you're producing content. which I guess for this group is kind of a duh statement, but it really is an important one because it applies to so many people. Every user of Facebook is in some way creating content, whether that's just their profile page or their status updates or throwing a sheep at somebody. They're creating content that other people may be consuming. So we can see how this approach is becoming important, not just in uber high-tech rooms like these, but are you all familiar with Threadless? All right, for the few who aren't, it's a place where you can go get, if you're a cool designer or even not a cool designer, you can make a design, upload it to Threadless, it can become a t-shirt that others then buy, and there's a limited amount available for each given shirt. So it's kind of this cool little, you get your own unique thing that someone made over the internet. No Gap, no Banana Republic, etc. Now, what's also neat is when you enable creativity, and if you can't see this clearly enough, I did. There was supposed to be audio, but I backed off at the last second. So I'm going to pick up yet another theme in here. So we've talked about personalization and openness. I believe we live in an era of mass customization. And what I mean by that is we are all choosing how we are consuming content, how we are consuming goods and services, and more importantly, we're really craving individualism and kind of our own experience. We're looking for our own thing. You know, I want this thing, I want this Threadless shirt because I know you all can't get it. And you want this ringtone because that's going to make you stand out. And mass customization is really neat because it's allowing us to do cool things. Some of those things require, however, huge, huge catalysts to enable that change. And yes, that is me. That was me building one of the first sling boxes ever made in China. And the reason I'm pointing it out is because to build a physical good, we need some big companies to help out. This is a Mini Cooper. I don't know if you know this, but you can customize your Mini Cooper. So much so that if you go to the BMW Mini Cooper website, there are actually 2.2 million combinations possible for the Mini Cooper. Right now, that could just be your steering wheel or whatever, but the point is that there's a tremendous amount that we can all do. And you can look at Scion, they've also enabled the same thing. Timbuktu lets you have your very own messenger bag. And believe it or not, even Nike lets you have your own shoe. I designed this shoe yesterday and put a little Bug Labs thing on there. I didn't actually order it, but the point is that these are huge companies, and they're required because the capital requirements to enable customization in the physical world are huge. So then we reach some other sectors, and I'm going to come into a bit closer to my world now. This is a cell phone. This was, for a while, the most popular cell phone ever made. Was recently eclipsed by a phone that many of you now own and use. And what's interesting is when we look at consumer electronics and electronics in general, for some reason our control isn't, we're not taking our control. We're kind of taking the things that are handed down to us and just buying them at Best Buy or Amazon and putting up with it. You know, we all want different things. Some people need a 20-hour battery life in their laptop, and that would be the perfect thing ever. Others don't care about battery life. They want, you know, a great, huge screen. Everybody's got different kind of needs, yet we're not really asking for them. In fact, basically all of our choices out there are slight variations on the same theme. This is in Akihabara in Tokyo. This is all the different mice you can buy. But what if you want a unique piece of hardware? This was a real booth at CES a couple years ago. You know, if you want that one thing that solves a problem you have, but nobody else around you has, you can't get it. In fact, if you have a really cool idea for a gadget and you could sell 5,000 of them, you go knock on Sony's door and they're just going to laugh you out of the office because their economies don't let them fulfill a market like that. Not that they're bad, it's just that those realities don't work. So this is one of 2 entire slides on Bug Labs, then I go back to the openness. But just to let you know who we are in case you haven't heard, Bug Labs is an open platform for building gadgets. Normally I like to pass this around, but there are a lot of people here. So I'll be here, you can come take a look. The idea is that you can build hardware of your own desires. It's all open source, all GPL, open hardware, open software. Take the plastic off. You do not void your warranty by doing so. In fact, we have these little mounting kits so you can take all the plastics off, put the modules you want together, screw it back in, put other plastic around it, and go sell it if you want to. This is open consumer electronics. And I'll get into some examples of why that might be relevant. But the first one, just to give an example of something real, this is a motion detector module, so detects motion. Not right here because it's not plugged in. But hypothetically, this one would. This is a digital camera module. Now, if I plug these two together, I can now write software. I don't have to learn how to solder. I don't have to learn any manufacturing. I don't have to learn about voltage. All I have to know is some Java code and how to talk to RESTful web services. So all the programmers in the room, this is as complicated as building housing maps, okay? But I can use it to build an open source, crowdsourced home security system that, when it detects motion, puts an image up on Flickr, tells my Twitter followers that there happens to be someone at my door. And if you don't like how it works, you can download my code, change it, and make it even better. All right? That's putting control into your hands, not from those upon high. So some people say, well, why do you want this? Why is this important? Why does this all matter? There are cool gadgets. I mean, iPhone's a pretty cool gadget, and you can do a lot with it, and now it's kind of open. You can make it do more, although apparently a lot of people here have been having trouble with theirs as individuals. They've sold a good number. But let's talk about where we've come in technology for a second. In some ways, we've come a long, long way. For those who don't recognize it because they don't have one at home, this is an ENIAC. So what this guy's doing right here is trying to find the broken bulb. He has 14,000 of them to go through. Now, where have we come? Let's start on the software side of the world. Software's come a long way. We used to have punch cards, and from punch cards we had cool platforms that we could code in. And then the environment got a little richer to use. And nowadays, you can pretty much drag and drop and make things happen without, this is Yahoo Pipes. So we went from assembler to Fortran to Java to et cetera. But today, we have a lot of different very, very visual, rich environments to write code with. And then let's talk about hardware. When you wanted to hack hardware, let's say 40 years ago, you had soldering iron and still a soldering iron, and you still have a soldering iron. That's about as far as we've come in the hardware hacking world. So when we think about what you need to launch a software company today, pretty much GoDaddy and maybe a little Google, and you can launch a new company. I didn't buy it. It's free. Go for it. First come, first serve. I'm sure you could resell it for like 12 bucks after the show. But what do you need to launch a hardware company today? It's a little bit different. It's very resource intensive. It's extremely, what's that? This is from the Olympics. This is takes a lot more if you want to build some hardware. Now, there are some exceptions. If any of you made it out to Makers Faire this year, people are hacking. I'm not saying there's zero hacking going on. There's lots of it. There's lots of cool things being done. But in general, we have a problem in the consumer electronics world. These are my really, really terrible graphs. But basically, it's a hit or miss world. If you're going to go build a gadget and you are a big company, you assign some budget, you do some market research, you make your numbers. This phone's got 1 more megapixel than the last one, so we'll probably sell X. It's a terrible, terrible industry. Most gadgets do fail. Not as many as restaurants fail, but gadgets tend to do poorly. And when you have big failure, it can be very expensive. This is the Palm Folio. This was a $10 million write-off, and it never even shipped. $10 million bucks to build it, put out your marketing plans, R&D, never even shipped. I kind of wonder what would happen if they just at least sold a couple on eBay. But it's an industry that doesn't really afford making mistakes. So we think that there's a problem fundamentally in the way the consumer electronics market works. Today, it's a $170 billion industry, and you have a few segments of products, and there's just something wrong with this picture, and we'll call it the long tail. And whether or not you subscribe to long tail theory, whether or not X equals Y, the long tail equals the fat head, I don't know. I don't know if niche electronics represents $170 billion. I have no idea. It could represent 1/10 of that, or even 1% of that. Either way, there is some marketplace out there where if I have a gadget like my crowdsourced home security system, and there's 500 people who want this, if I have a way of making that cost effectively without having to go build a factory or something, well, we can see some kind of long tail emerge. We actually, regardless of us, there are numerous efforts going on right now to enable people to build their own things, and whether they monetize it, contribute it, sell it at cost, whatever's going to happen, there's a lot more coming in that space. And specifically on the gadgets, I'm going to use the term the CEO of Bug dubbed, which he called the pizza tail. It's a variation on the long tail. And if you will, these are all slices of pepperoni. Sorry for the vegans in the room. But each slice represents a category of gadgets. And something that's really interesting when you talk to gadget people is our world has such little vocabulary. We have about these dozen or so terms to use that everything has to fit into. We don't have the stuff in between. So we think about the pizza tail to say, if each of you have some interesting creative idea, it might sit over here somewhere that doesn't really map out with the gadgets we think of and know of today. I showed you the alcohol breathalyzer plus MP3 player. Technically, we would say, well, that's an MP3 player. But it really, really isn't. And so we need to expand our vocabulary somehow. We like to think that everybody does like to tinker in some way. Maybe your tinkering is blogging. Maybe your tinkering is playing with cars, which is another interesting industry that has completely closed down. People who used to work on their cars in their garages on the weekends, if you go buy a brand new car, that's no longer quite the easy proposition. So, side topic. But we fundamentally need tools and we need access if we're going to go out and tinker. We're going to go out and take control of our destiny in this space. The good thing is that there's a lot of great signs out there. Make Magazine's 5 years old and has fairly strong and growing subscribership. I think I always like to look at what's happened to things like WordPress. WordPress started by a couple of guys, and today, because of individuals who blog there, as well as the platform itself, one can start a blog, one can extend that blog with plugins and widgets, and one can get themes for that blog. One can then take that to a next level and extend that through writing their own themes or contributing their own plugins and really create their own complete identity. We're hoping that we see a lot of that start happening back in the physical space. So, maybe you too can become this guy, and maybe you too can come up with that cool gadget that everybody's going to crave and want and hand down. And the way I like to pose the question, and I'm going to bring my friend Robert back into the story for a second, is, who's going to be the Robert Scoble of gadgets? Who's going to be the individuals that emerge and become infamous in some space because they invented something cool in their garage, in their room, in their study, wherever. They didn't need a soldering iron. They didn't need a factory in China. They just needed some technology providers to give them the tools they would need. And as a last little thing for the show, we're doing a contest for some free bug kits, and it's really easy. All you need is a little bit of an idea. The URL is already on the GnomeDex homepage. Basically, there's a link up there called the Bug Labs GnomeDex contest link page site. And if you click on that, there's a wiki. And basically, all you have to do is go in, make up a gadget. Give us a reason why you want that gadget. We're going to pick 4 of them in a week and send you guys free bugs, and hopefully you will actually make the gadget. You need a little bit of Java skills today to get it working. And for those of you who don't win, we are going to do a big discount, which I'll blog about. But basically, anyone here, we're doing almost half off. It's $3.99 for the whole bug bundle. And really, we just want to see you guys tinkering more than anything else. So that is my deck, and I hope there's some good questions out there. Thank you very much. The beers don't show up, so you have time to ask questions if you. I have a question. Yeah.
So I'm really just curious about the whole scaling thing, right? And so, this is very, very much of a micro kind of approach. And so how do you scale this through a community, through a society? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. So how do we scale this up? This is actually, I think, where the company itself comes in. If we can go out there and take on the burden of saying, we'll go build lots of these and lots of modules for you guys to go play with, well, we're going to make a bet on that long tail thing. We're going to say that you can come up with something that 100 people want, and this guy over here can make something 1,000 people want, and that lady over there can make something that 20,000 people over want. And all we need is a small number of you guys to actually be out there doing these things, and the whole business actually scales from there. We also launched on the site an implementation of IdeaScale, which is kind of like Dell's IdeaStorm thing, so that people can suggest new modules. So we have a roadmap of 80 different modules. We've already had contributions of 50 ideas that we had never heard of before, show up from the community. So we're actually letting the community tell us what to build next. We go out, find the chips, find hopefully open source drivers, or else we write them ourselves, and make those available. So today our modules are fairly run-of-the-mill GPS, cameras, LCDs, things that you would know and use comfortably. But we also have things like a laser rangefinder, thermal sensors, weather interfaces, atmospheric pressure, dead reckoning. Someone wants to build one with tank treads. But we're letting the community actually tell us where to go so that we can support the community back.
Being a Java programmer myself, or being technical at all, I see that as a barrier to entry to be able to do that. Do you see a future where there's things that will give people like me the tools to be able to make it work, along with having the idea?
Absolutely. So we basically have decided that our first year is all about heads down, getting things built. And one of those things we're building, so we have the SDK in Java, but we actually have two efforts going on, and they're really at exploratory phases. Maybe we can get some people in the community to help out to create visual Yahoo Pipes-like interfaces for building stuff. The cool thing is the program for dragging, you literally drag and drop apps into your bug the same way you would with an iPod and iTunes. It's the exact same analogy. The issue is today we just don't have enough interesting apps for what I would say a wider audience. So our goal right now, get lots of Java developers to think this is cool, give them the tools, reach out to universities, find lots of ways to get this to people who might like to use it. Hope they build a lot of apps and hope that some of those apps interest the others, and then provide tools to get a bigger following after. 20 people can only do so much.
Jeremy, I heard you mention tank treads.
Yes?
And I was really, Sam's back here being really cute here, by the way, though. Everyone say aw at Sam. Aw. So I was really inspired by Scott's speech on the rover. And when you said tank treads, I got excited that I could build my own little lunar rover. But I need an open source rocket. So if
Call
anybody
Scott.
is working on that, please let me know.
So this is absolutely sweet tech, really, really cool. And I love the idea, and I've got like tons of ideas for things that small numbers of people would want. But I see the big obstacle with this right now just being the price currently. Do you guys have, as far as like mass appeal, do you have kind of a company approach to how to deal with the current price of the kits? You know,
Absolutely. So we absolutely do. Basically, we're a small company, as I mentioned earlier. We offered actually an early adopter discount for the first 120 days of orders. And what we're doing now is we've moved to a new contract manufacturer. As we get into a certain volume hit, cost to build goes down. We will translate that cost down to consumers. There's a little chicken and egg trickiness, which is that if everybody waits for us to bring the cost down, we can't build enough to get the cost down. So we'll be really open and blatant about it the whole way as we go. But it's, we'll support you if you support us is, I guess, the way we can deal with it. Question up here, microphone.
To touch on the programming issue that was raised earlier, have you ever thought of integration with LabVIEW? Because I know LabVIEW gives kind of I know Lego Mindstorm, those Next systems use LabVIEW for kind of a visual representation of the programming. Have you guys ever thought about that?
It's a great point. I apologize, forgot to bring this up. So you can go download the SDK now. It's got a virtual bug. So you can actually, if you don't want to spend any money today, but you want to go try building something, you can. And if it works, then you can go get the hardware. So it's visual. We've got that. Regarding other tools, we've been really focused on just making our Eclipse-based SDK work really well. Again, we will beseech the community to help us get into other interfaces as fast as possible.
Okay, cool.
Oh, sorry. I just was curious, so most of what people do once they get the kits is actually write software for and like put different parts on it, different modules on it. But like people aren't designing modules for like you couldn't design your own variant on the motion detector, or like.
Sure. So we have a module that will come out next month. It's called the von Hippel module. It's actually named after MIT professor Eric von Hippel. whose book, Democratizing Innovation, inspired the CEO of the company. So a little homage there. It's a breakout board. So it's got open access to every single thing that the base can do. So if you've got your own GPS sensor, you can wire it up yourself for a complete, unique, one-off device. One of the things that we use something called a Samtec connector, which is open source. And for the hardware geeks in the room, basically every lead from the CPU is made accessible. So whatever power interface you need, whatever data interface, whether it's serial or whatever, I2C, whatever you need is exposed here. Again, there's varying levels of technical complexity to get to them, but it's all there. And by the way, you can actually, if you really are ambitious, you can go to Pinocchio, where they let you design custom hardware, like plastics and physical materials. You can download our CAD files, modify them, upload them to Pinocchio, and have a unique bug made for yourself if you want. So when we say it's open, like, you can get the CAD files, you can get the board schematics, you can get absolutely every piece of information you want to know about what's going on in here. And if we're missing something, please just tell us. It was more an oversight than anything else. And it'll be in the next Mars robot, so there. No. It already is. How about that? I'll pass it back to you.
No, it's fine. Anybody else? Nobody else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.